The dog's name was Hector. He was a 6-year-old German Shepherd mix, 38 kilograms, with a scar above his left eye from something that happened before the family got him. He had slept at the foot of the youngest child's bed since the week they brought him home. He had never bitten anyone. He had never come close. On a Tuesday evening in October, he bit the father. Not a warning snap, a full bite. On the arm that reached down to move him off the sofa, the family's description afterward was the same description that veterinary behaviorists hear in almost every case like this. He was fine all day. Nothing happened. There was no warning. He has never done anything like this before. He just turned. The family was telling the truth about all of it, and every single thing they said was also wrong, because Hector had not turned. Hector had not changed overnight. What happened on that Tuesday evening was the last event in a sequence that had been building for considerably longer than anyone in that house had realized. And by the time we get to the end of this video, you will understand exactly what that sequence was, why nobody saw it, and what it means for the dog you live with right now. Number 1, what the family described. The family had owned Hector since he was 8 months old. In 6 years, the behavioral record was essentially clean. He was protective around the house without being reactive in public. He tolerated the children without reservation. He had been through 3 home moves, the birth of a second child, a period when the father worked nights and was largely absent, and 2 separate incidents with neighborhood dogs, one of which had drawn blood on his flank. In the months before the incident, the family noticed a few things they described as minor. Hector had become slower on walks. They had assumed age. He had started choosing the kitchen floor over his usual spot on the living room rug. They had not thought much of it. He had growled once, approximately 3 weeks earlier, when the younger child had tried to climb over him on the sofa. The father had corrected Hector for the growl. Hector had been quiet since. On the evening of the incident, Hector had been on the sofa for approximately 2 hours. When the father reached down to move him to make space, Hector bit without any prior vocalization. The family's conclusion was that something in Hector had broken, that 6 years of good behavior had somehow been replaced overnight by something dangerous and unknown. That conclusion is what almost every family reaches in cases like this, and it is the conclusion that behavioral science has been working to correct for 30 years. Number 2, what was actually happening? In 2010, a review published in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior analyzed 109 cases of sudden onset aggression in dogs with no prior behavioral history. In 79 of those 109 cases, the primary driver was an undiagnosed physical condition, pain. Not a personality change, not a mysterious shift in temperament, not 6 years of loyalty replaced by something dark. In nearly 73% of cases, a dog that bit without apparent warning was a dog that had been in pain, often for weeks or months that no one had detected. Dogs do not communicate pain the way humans do. They do not slow down and show you where it hurts. They do not ask for rest. They do not explain that the movement you just made caused something in their body to fire in a way they could not tolerate. What they do is compensate. They shift position. They avoid the surface that makes the pain worse. They choose the cool kitchen floor over the rug because the hard surface does not put pressure on the joint that is inflamed. They move more slowly on walks because speed costs them something. None of those compensations look like pain to an owner who does not know what they are looking at. They look like aging. They look like preference. They look like a slightly less energetic dog who is otherwise fine until someone moves them off the sofa without warning. And the compensation system, which had been managing the pain silently for months, receives a sudden load it cannot absorb. Number 3, the pain. Nobody saw. Hector was 6 years old. A German Shepherd mix at 6 carries a specific risk profile. Hip dysplasia affects an estimated 19% of German Shepherds. Degenerative joint disease, which it develops from dysplasia or from accumulated wear across a working-sized dog's active years, typically becomes symptomatic in the 4 to 7 year range. The progression is gradual. The dog adapts to each new level of discomfort before it becomes visible in behavior. By the time the behavior changes are apparent, the condition has usually been present for a considerable period. The slower walks were a symptom. At 6 years old, a German Shepherd mix choosing to move more slowly is not showing age. They are showing that movement costs more than it used to. The preference for the kitchen floor was a symptom. Hard, cool surfaces reduce inflammation pressure on joints. Dogs in pain seek them out. It is not a behavioral quirk, it is self-medication. The position on the sofa was a symptom. A dog in joint pain will find the configuration that minimizes pressure on the affected area and hold it. Moving from that configuration, especially unexpectedly and from above, the direction of maximum threat in any animal's threat response system produces a pain response that bypasses the behavioral regulation that years of training and socialization had built. In 2019, researchers at the Royal Veterinary College in London studied 60 dogs referred for sudden onset aggression. They found that in 56 of those 60 cases, the aggression was position-specific. It occurred when the dog was touched or moved in a way that loaded the painful area. It did not occur in neutral contexts. The dog was not aggressive. The dog was in pain and could not protect themselves from the source of pain any other way. Hector's bite was not a betrayal. It was the only tool he had left. Number 4, what 6 years had built. Before we get to what broke, it is worth being precise about what was real. 6 years of protective, gentle behavior is not nothing. It is not a facade that was hiding something dangerous underneath. Hector was genuinely the dog the family believed him to be. The loyalty was real. The bond was real. The behavioral record was accurate. What the research shows about long-term dog-owner relationships adds a layer to this that most owners never encounter. In 2019, researchers at Linköping University in Sweden measured long-term cortisol levels in 58 dog-owner pairs using hair samples, which capture hormonal accumulation over weeks and months, rather than moment-to-moment spikes. The cortisol levels were synchronized. A stressed owner produced a stressed dog. A calm owner produced a calm dog. And the direction of the relationship was clear. The owner's cortisol predicted the dog's, not the reverse. This means Hector's nervous system had been calibrated to the family's emotional environment for 6 years. Every period of household stress, every disruption, every sustained tension the family moved through had been absorbed into Hector's baseline stress level simultaneously. The father's night shift period, the home moves, the incident with the neighborhood dog that drew blood and was never formally addressed with behavioral support. These were not events that passed through the household and left Hector unchanged. They were events that accumulated in his nervous system the way they accumulated in the family's, except that a dog has no way to process or discharge that accumulation through language, reflection, or deliberate stress management. A dog carries everything it has lived through in its body. Hector had lived through a great deal, and he had done it in a body that was, by the time of the incident, also in chronic pain. Number 5, the night it broke. On the evening of the incident, Hector had been on the sofa for 2 hours. Those 2 hours are worth examining now that the framework exists to read them. Hector had found a position that managed his hip pain. The configuration on the sofa placed his weight in a way that reduced the pressure on the inflamed joint. He had been still long enough that the acute pain level had dropped from active to background. His nervous system had settled into the specific, hard-won equilibrium that a dog in chronic pain learns to find and hold. His cortisol was elevated from 6 years of accumulated stress and months of unmanaged physical pain. His behavioral flexibility, the neurological resource that allows a dog to assess a situation, select a measured response, and inhibit a reactive one, was operating at a deficit. High cortisol sustained over long periods reduces exactly that capacity. It is not a character failure. It is a measurable neurochemical state. 3 weeks earlier, he had growled when the child climbed over him. The growl was the warning system functioning correctly. It was the communication that said, "I am in pain. I am at my limit. Please stop." The father had corrected him for it. The warning system had been penalized. On the Tuesday evening, when the arm reached down from above, unexpected in the dark of 2 hours of settled pain, his position was disrupted in a way that sent an acute pain signal through an already saturated nervous system. He had no growl left to give. It had been corrected out of him 3 weeks earlier. He had no behavioral reserve left to draw on. It had been depleted over months and years. What he had was one response remaining. He used it. Number 6, what the research shows about sudden aggression. Hector's case is not unusual. It is, in its essential structure, the most common pattern in the behavioral literature on sudden onset aggression in dogs with no prior history. A 2020 review in Frontiers in Veterinary Science examined 200 cases of owner-reported sudden aggression in previously non-aggressive dogs. The review found 3 factors present in the majority of cases: an undiagnosed or undertreated physical condition causing pain, a prior warning signal that had been punished or ignored, removing a layer of the dog's communication capacity, and a triggering event that overloaded a nervous system already operating at or near its threshold. The review's authors described the owner narrative of suddenness as consistent and understandable, but structurally inaccurate in almost every case. The dog had been communicating. The communication had been in a language the owner had not been taught to read, and the gap between what was being sent and what was being received had, over time, narrowed the dog's available options until only one remained. The researchers also noted something specific about the role of warning signal suppression. In 68% of cases where a prior warning had been corrected or punished, the subsequent aggressive incident was more severe than in cases where the warning had been acknowledged or the stressor reduced. Removing the growl does not remove the state that produced the growl. It removes the buffer between that state and the action. This is not a fringe finding. It is a consistent result across multiple research groups, across multiple countries, across dogs of every breed and size. The dog that bites without warning was almost always a dog that warned. The warning was almost always missed. If this is changing how you understand your dog, subscribe. Every week we go this deep on dog behavior. It is free, and it will change what you see. 7. The signals that were there. The signals were there. Let's name them precisely. The slower walks over the preceding months were behavioral compensation for pain. The appropriate response was a veterinary assessment. The family read them as aging. The preference for the kitchen floor was the dog seeking a surface that reduced joint pressure. The appropriate response was to investigate why a dog who had always preferred the rug was now choosing hard floor. The family read it as preference. The growl 3 weeks before the incident was a stress and pain signal produced by a dog at the edge of their tolerance threshold. It was a warning, a request, and a piece of diagnostic information simultaneously. The appropriate response was to remove the child from Hector's space, note the signal, and schedule a veterinary appointment. The father corrected the dog for producing it. The 2 hours of stillness on the sofa on the evening of the incident was the dog in pain management mode. A dog that usually moves around in the evening, lying completely still for an extended period, is a dog managing something. The appropriate response was to notice the stillness as departure from baseline. The family did not notice it because no one had taught them what departure from baseline looks like or why it matters. None of these signals were subtle in the sense of being small or hard to observe. They were subtle in the sense of requiring a framework to interpret. Without the framework, they were invisible. With it, they were a clear and progressive record of a dog in physical and neurological distress, communicating that distress in every way available to them. The signals were there. The vocabulary to read them was not. Number 8. What this means for every dog owner. The reason this story exists in this video is not because Hector's case is rare. It is because Hector's case is common. If you have a dog, the question this video is asking you to carry with you is not whether your dog would ever bite someone. That question keeps owners looking at the end of the sequence. The question that matters is earlier than that. What has changed in your dog's behavior in the last 3 months that you have filed under aging, preference, or a phase? Movement changes. A dog that runs and now trots. A dog that jumps and now hesitates. A dog that used to climb onto the sofa without effort and now takes a moment before they try. These are not age. They are information. Surface changes. A dog that moves away from their usual sleeping spot. A dog that lies on different floors in different weather. A dog finding cool tile when they used to seek warm carpet. These are not preference. They are self-management of a physical state the dog has no other way to address. Social changes. A dog that used to greet the children at the door and now stays in the other room. A dog that used to solicit contact and now tolerates it. A dog that used to lean into being touched and now holds still with a body that is slightly too stiff for the situation. These are not mood. They are a nervous system operating closer to its threshold than it used to. And warning signals, any growl, any snap, any moment where your dog produced a signal that said, "I am at my limit," however you read it at the time. The appropriate response to every one of those signals is not correction. It is investigation. What is this dog managing? What have I been missing? What does this signal tell me about where they are right now? Hector's family loved him. They were not neglectful owners. They were owners without a framework. You now have one. Number 9, the question every owner needs to ask. After the incident, Hector was seen by a veterinary behaviorist. The examination found moderate bilateral hip dysplasia. The joint inflammation was consistent with a condition that had likely been developing for 12 to 18 months. The behaviorist assessment was that the bite was a pain response triggered by unexpected movement in a dog whose warning system had been suppressed 3 weeks earlier and whose pain threshold had been progressively lowering for over a year. Hector was placed on anti-inflammatory medication. Within 3 weeks, the kitchen floor preference disappeared. He returned to the living room rug. The walk pace increased. He began soliciting contact from the family again in ways he had quietly stopped doing months earlier, so gradually that no one had noticed the withdrawal. The family had not noticed him pulling away because he had not pulled away suddenly. He had done it one small step at a time, across months, managing something they did not know he was managing in a body that had been asking for help in the only language available to him. He was not a different dog after the incident than he was before it. He was the same dog he had always been in a body that had been carrying something too heavy for too long, without anyone knowing what to look for. The question every dog owner needs to ask, not when something goes wrong, but now, before anything goes wrong, is this: what is my dog managing right now that I have not asked about? Not because your dog is dangerous, because your dog is communicating every day in a language they were born knowing and that most owners are never taught. Hector told the family for over a year that something was wrong. The bite was not the message. The bite was what happened when every other message went unanswered.